Glorantha is a myth-based fantasy world. It's a collective vision from myself and a number of other people. In Glorantha, the gods are real, and I don't mean that they're just giant monsters. I mean that they are the mythical underthought, the mystical background of the world that people respond in and live in. It's a combination of human desires and immaculate, immortal perfection. It's a world where ideas clash as if they were people, and where people cooperate as if they were insubstantial ideas. The primary focus that we've had for a long time is the conflict between the sky gods, between the all-knowing sun and the all-changing storm, which has lately been interfered by the moon goddess, who is either or both of those things. Glorantha began in 1966 when I was a freshman in college. I had read all the mythology books I could find and thought, wow, I guess I've used them all up. And so one day I started to write my own. I wrote a couple of adventure stories set in the northwestern quadrant of Glorantha without knowing they were even there yet. But I had created this story. And immediately it opened the vista for me of starting to think, well, I should explain this in the background. I should explain that in the background. And suddenly one day I was standing next to Blaisdell Hall in Beloit College, and the whole world kind of opened up for me. It was like I had a tiny little peek hole in the stories I wrote, and suddenly it was vast, infinite. At that time, I remember thinking very clearly, wow, this thing is so big that it would be so cool if someday there was a whole staff of people to work on this thing. You know, dozens of people that were familiar with it and would be able to contribute to it. I kept working on it for years, all on my own. I would read portions to my girlfriends because it was a cheap date. And generally, though, it was not well known, not well shared. I had published a couple of short stories through fan fiction at the time, but in 1975, I was struck by the idea of starting a game to produce Visions of Glorantha. And my first game was a board game, White Bear and Red Moon, in which I provided the setting and characters, and each time that you played it would be a plot. It was an epic game. I wanted nothing less than an epic scope of vast numbers of faceless people swarming the world, trying to do their best to portray, to present, to overcome their enemies, to make their own way, to be dominant. But at the same time with gods that were overlooking it all and not interfering absolutely directly, but through the worshippers. My first board game was out in 1975, and that was the same year that D&D was released. And I became familiar with D&D briefly. I was approached by some local gamers down in Berkeley who wanted to do a role-playing game. So we collaborated and came out with the first Glorantha game, role-playing game called RuneQuest. At that time, my job changed slightly because I went from being the only writer to guiding and teaching other people about it. The result of that is this book. I've been trying to write this book for 45 years, trying to put everything down into one place as far as my vision and outlook goes in presenting the vast world that I saw back in 1966. I could never really do it. I really have been trying to publish this book for 45 years and never succeeded until I got out of the way and let some other people let their own powers loose in this world. And the result is this book, which I am just totally chuffed about. I'm dying to see the final product, and I sincerely hope anybody who likes this would join in.